no industry or company is perfect, right? There's always going to be some weak and vulnerable points inside of an organization. Some of them are by company choice, right? Where the CEO's like, I want a simple password. I don't want to use two-factor authentication. Okay, okay, like what am I gonna, I have it in writing. Like, what am I going to do? And I, obviously we do what they ask, but it can be challenging. I think the goal obviously is to be as preventative as possible, but there's some things you just can't predict, 0-day flaws that come out.
Welcome to Business Ninjas, brought to you by WriteForMe, where you'll hear from business leaders who are out there growing their business and slaying it every day. Learn from the masters. Let's get started.
Hey everybody, welcome back for another episode of Business Ninjas. I'm here today with Chad Lauterbach. He's the CEO and founder of B-Structure Technology Group, a managed service provider in downtown LA. Chad, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
Excited to have you. So Chad, why don't you start and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Yeah. I grew up in Arizona, always had an interest in technology, gadgets. I got into computing fairly early. Full disclosure, I'm 43, was born in 1980. So like it was the very beginning of like the personal computer revolution, right? So I worked on, I messed around with everything from like an Atari to a Commodore computer, a Commodore PET computer. My dad had an IBM XT for work. Eventually we got a 386, and then like the big moment where I had like my own machine was I got a Pentium 120, if anybody knows what that is, like way back in the day, running Windows NT4. So, but IT had always been kind of interest for me, and computers has always been an interest for me. But I never really got into coding. I really got into kind of making them do business applications for people, that kind of thing. And so, yeah, I mean, besides that, I was a runner, still am a runner, hiker, camper, rock climber, kind of outdoorsy guy besides that. And yeah.
That's Chad. That's great. Well, no, I appreciate the background. That lays a great context for kind of who you are. So why don't you tell me a little bit about Be Structured and how you founded Be Structured?
Yeah, so I feel really lucky. I got in high school, even before I could drive, I was 15 years old. All my friends are working at like Taco Bell or whatever. Well, I got this gig at Mayo Clinic, which is obviously a famous outpatient clinic in Arizona. The main one's I think in Illinois, but it's one of their other clinics. And it was a third party, but they were doing a huge network overhaul. It was one of Microsoft's first very, very large NT4 rollouts in the commercial space. So obviously I was doing much lower level tasks than I do today. I was installing printers and computers and monitors and whatever. But I got the opportunity to do like some printer share editions and interface with NTFS, or I'm sorry, NT professionals back in the day, MCSEs. And they were really cool. They just taught me a lot. They're really open in conversation and everything like that. I worked for them for 3 years during high school. All my friends were jealous because I was making a whopping I think like $19 an hour versus like, they're making like minimum wage at Taco Bell. So they think I'm rich or whatever, which is kind of funny. But yeah, so I had an early interest. I did some consulting on the side for some of my friends' companies and things like that. In hindsight, I probably was a little bit over my head in all of these roles, but I guess in some ways, aren't we always, when we're like in our teens and 20s, like trying to figure out what to do professionally? So I decided that it would be worthwhile for me to go full time for a little bit at an organization before just completely branching out on my own. I had been doing some contract work, but I got the opportunity. One of my friends' fathers was building a logistics company out here in Los Angeles, which is how I ended up out here. And I helped build that business essentially from, I don't even know what we started with, 20 people maybe to 200 or so. And they're like 1,000 people today. They're a big company. So that was really cool and exciting. I also got the chance to work for another logistics company in Chicago. So I've got a kind of deep logistics background in that sense. And then yeah, just I kind of reached a point after I think it was like 3 or 4 years I was working full time where I was like, okay, I've gained a lot of skills. I've made some mistakes. I've done some good things, but I've learned a lot, and I feel like I'm ready to kind of go out on my own. For me, initially, that looked like just independent consulting for a couple of years. Then I started to be structured and was really it was really initially just an IT support company. So I was supporting firms on a time and materials basis, but fairly quickly realized after reading a lot of industry publications and things like that, people were moving into the fixed fee, outsourced, managed service space. So I figured out how to migrate, be structured over to that model pretty quickly, moved a lot of my clients over, and then slowly but surely started to build a business. So
That's fantastic. So, you mentioned talking about starting Be Structured with just doing that IT support. Talk to me about that growth and what that looked like going from, where it was just IT support to now, a full managed service provider.
yeah, I mean that's been a journey, a marathon, not a sprint, if you will. So initially we did fixed fee support. We did it on a per device basis. Now we do things on a per user basis. The offering by today's standards would have been really limited, right? It was like patch management and antivirus and a couple other things, right? Nowadays, we're offering just a slew of security products, monitoring products, all this really advanced stuff that, are becoming more and more important for our clients. But yeah, and then eventually we moved to charging per user, and then eventually became a managed security service provider, MSSP, and adding security services on top of that. So it'll be a little bit alphabet soupy, but like SIM, EDR, all these other application allow and deny listing, etc. Just all these other services that really do a lot to protect our clients. They do have additional costs though, so we've been gaining. There's been a lot of traction there. Our clients want those products, so the last 2 years we've quite quadrupled our security service revenue, just because our clients are looking for that. So, and it just keeps going. Like just today is the first day, February 1st, where Google and Yahoo and Microsoft are looking at DMARC records for outbound email. I mean, we have a bunch of clients contacting us about setting up DMARC records and charging them for easy. DMARC is the solution we're using. And so, we're constantly having to find and build new solutions for our clients as the environment changes. So it's been really dynamic. There was kind of an initial switch to hourly to per device, but then the switches from then on have been very organic and changing almost annually over these years. So.
When you were talking, I was thinking to myself, it sounds like one of the ways that you're able to differentiate yourself as a company and, as a CEO and founder is being nimble and dynamic to hear what your clients are looking for, to be able to say, let's add on these different security, like you said, starting where you did, moving up now to talking about DMARC. It sounds like you're listening to what your clients are saying and able to adjust and grow on behalf of that.
Yeah, yeah. It actually, I would say, goes both ways in my industry, ironically, because we do listen to the customer's requirements and needs, obviously, but we also have to educate our clients, which I think happens in many industries, but our industry especially the way we do our industry, we're not talking to a CTO, CIO kind of person, right? We're talking to a CFO, COO, CEO that probably has fairly limited IT knowledge. So we have to educate them. I mean, I literally was just doing this with a client the other day. I have to educate them on what is SPF, what is DKIM, what is DMARC, right? And the audience probably doesn't even know what those are. But the point is, like, I have to educate them on what it is and why they need it. And then they're like, oh, okay, I'll spend whatever, $100 or $200 a month or whatever it is to get those services put in place. And so there's an aspect of educating the client too. And some of our clients are like, no, I don't want that. And that's okay. We just get in writing, like, they decline these services. And then if it comes back, unfortunately, having been in IT for long enough, we've had a few ransomwares, we've had a few phishing attacks that were successful. And, that's been that's been unfortunate. It's not the way I want to sell products, but it's been an unfortunate way we have sold products where we go, hey, would you like to get our anti-phishing tools now? Or, hey, would you like to get our application allowed deny listing and EDR software now? And they're like, yeah, I mean, I guess we do, versus spending $50,000 on a ransomware, right? So
Do you find a lot of the work that you do is preventative more so than kind of crisis management?
that is the goal of an MSP. You know, the reality of our industry is we do a really good job, and the reality also is that no industry or company is perfect, right? So there's always going to be some weak and vulnerable points inside of an organization. Some of them are by company choice, right? Where the CEO is like, I want a simple password. I don't want to use two-factor authentication. It's like, you have literally the most important, okay, you know, okay, like what am I, I have it in writing. Like, what am I going to do? And I, you know, obviously we do what they ask, but it can be challenging. You know, I think the goal obviously is to be as preventative as possible, but there's some things you just can't predict. You know, 0-day flaws that come out, people's credentials getting dropped on the dark web, a successful social engineering, which, you know, kind of falls in the IT realm these days, but you know, is really not totally. You know, it can involve email, which I think is why, or the phone system, which often is run by us too. But you know, yeah. So there's a lot. Ultimately, the answer to your question is yes. It's proactive and preventative to the extent that it can be, but I don't even know, 3-4 times a year, there's always an emergency that we're dealing with too. And we try our hardest to minimize those because they're costly for us as well.
Mhm.
So as the client.
What would you say one of the biggest misconceptions, maybe not about, being an MSP, maybe not about entrepreneurship in general or be structured. Is there anything that you tend to hear often from your clients that you're like, that's just not the case or anything like that?
Probably the biggest thing today goes back to cybersecurity. I mean, most of our, not all of our, but most of our clients have a fairly small footprint, right? They're a 30-person law firm. They're a, 25-person wealth management company, and they just think they're flying below the radar, but they're not. The hacking groups that are out there are really just looking to make money. They don't care about your business, and they know that you're going to be an easier target than, say, 20th Century Fox or something, or the NSA, right? So they may very well be reasons that North Korea is trying to hack the NSA, but like, your average, Joe Schmo hacker is going to be looking for easy targets. So, I use the kind of joke, I live in Los Angeles, so it's like, if you don't leave anything visible in your car when you park it on the street, right? So it's like, I'm like, okay, like, do you want to be the car where that's locked and you can't see anything? Or do you want to be the car that's got like $1,000 sitting on the passenger seat that's unlocked, right? Or even if it is locked, they're going to break the window, right? It's like, it's you want to have the measure where somebody else is much easier to target than you. And so it doesn't have to be implementing every security system that we have, but implementing a baseline of security, which for us these days is two-factor authentication, EDR, which is essentially kind of the next generation of antivirus, and application allowed deny listing. To us, those are kind of like the minimum. Do all of our clients use those? No. Do I wish they did? Yeah, absolutely. Like, those things make it hard enough that I think anybody that actually got into the environment would be like, this is more complicated than I want to deal with. I'm going to go find the easier target.
I think that's great. And, like you said, it's not necessarily about targeting the biggest, but, sometimes hackers, it sounds like, I'm not a hacker myself, but it sounds like sometimes going for those like small to medium sized companies is that may have those lower level of security features is kind of where they make their money. So that's interesting. Kind of pivoting a little bit, Chad, I'm curious to get your opinion. Are there any specific, I don't know, technologies or trends? I know you talked a little bit about DMARC a second ago that you believe are going to play a crucial role in the growth of MSPs and really the tech industry in the future?
Well, there's a lot of questions right now. That's interesting. I mean, I think the cloud has been transformative, but it also is taking a lot of time to get adopted by smaller businesses because of the cost. A lot of our clients would prefer to have a $20,000, $30,000, $50,000 outlay of cash for 5 years versus spending $8,000 a month, right? I mean, you do the math, it costs a lot more over 5 years. So, but I think the cloud is becoming more and more accessible to small businesses. We've been moving more and more clients over, and I think it will be. I think the most interesting thing going on is what's going on with generative AI, and not, obviously there's a lot of interesting use cases for it. Just chatting with it for fun, getting answers, writing articles, all this other kind of stuff. But what I think a lot of people don't really fully realize is it can write computer code. And what that means is hacking groups now can use things like ChatGPT to write intentionally malicious code and attempt to get it to execute. And they can just iterate and do this so much more rapidly than they could before. Because, writing code takes time, just like writing an article takes time. Well, if you can have the computer write 90% of the code and do a little bit of editing, it's going to make it dramatically faster for you to continue to iterate and move. So, just like we're seeing all these other AI companies, WriteForMe.io included, popping up all around the generative AI space, I think we're going to see hacking groups figuring out how to utilize this to hack more rapidly and with more faster iteration on the tools they're using. And I think that's just going to cause even more requirements for more security than we have today.
Yeah. I don't think like a hacker necessarily. I'm not in your world or your industry, but that makes a lot of sense. I use ChatGPT all the time, like you said, for fun, for work and whatnot. So, it's interesting to think about it in being used in a malicious way, to not for good or not for educational purposes. But no, I appreciate that insight. Well, Chad, I think this has been a very informative conversation. As we start to wrap up, is there anything that you want to leave our listeners with, whether it be advice, anything about Be Structured, being an MSP, anything that you want to leave our listeners with?
So, Be Structured specifically, obviously, if you're a company in LA, we focus on the business to business space. So we're not doing business to consumer. So if you're a restaurant or hotel or whatever, there are MSPs that are specifically dialed into what you do. But yeah, if you're a business to business organization, could be shipping, could be manufacturing, could be anything like that. Definitely consider giving us a call. We're 100% LA based, which makes us pretty unique. We're available to come out and meet, and happy to chat with you about your solution that you have in place today. We found more and more that people just aren't happy with their MSPs. That's been a big change. Is 15 years ago, people hadn't even heard of what an MSP was, and they had in-house IT and were debating what to do. And now it's all, we're competing against incumbent MSPs that they're unhappy with. So the goal for us has really been to keep clients and keep clients happy. So, and yeah, I mean, I think, just like advice, if I could give, like advice I give my mom, right, is like, so if I can give some advice just to people that are listening that aren't maybe looking to get into the MSP space or looking to find an MSP, the two best things you can do to keep yourself secure are, number one, keep all your stuff updated. So whether it's Android, iOS, Windows, Mac, just run those updates. Because known vulnerabilities are what those are patching. And those are super dangerous because the hackers already know what they are. So it's just keep that stuff up to date. And then number two, use a password manager. Don't reuse passwords. Use a password manager, create complex passwords that are unique for every site. If you're unwilling to do it everywhere, at least do it on the really important stuff. So, and that doesn't mean, that's not necessarily exactly what you think. I mean, yes, banking, yes, email, but also think about the other services that allow you to sign in as. So that includes like social media accounts, Google, Microsoft, Apple, etc. Like those logins are all super, super, super important. So making sure that they're different and unique, and when possible, have two-factor authentication, enabled. Again, it kind of goes back to the company. Like so many people don't do that. They're using garbage passwords and they're using the same password across every service. They're so easy to target for the hacker. Whereas if a hacker finds, oh, I got into this one thing, but oh, the passwords and emails for everything are, all different across other stuff, you're going to be a difficult target, and they're probably just going to move on. So,
I think those are two great pieces of advice that I think all our listeners can benefit from, whether or not you're in the MSP or you're the tech industry. So, Chad, I really appreciate our conversation today. I think it was really insightful. I appreciate you sharing all your knowledge and being on Business Ninjas today.
Yeah, thanks so much. Thanks for having me.